Hello and welcome to this session, which is about chatbot authentication in Power Virtual Agents. So in now there's a bit of setup to do with Power Virtual Agents, but Power Virtual Agents for and authentication. But what it allows you to do once you have set it up is you can then call end user authentication inside your chatbot. It's just another node that you can add. So you can say, we want at this point to authenticate the user, to prompt the user with a sign-in card. And the authentication options, you've got a number of options for that authentication. But one of the why would you want to authenticate a user? Well, you can authenticate a user for a number of things. First of all, you can get access to their authentication data. So things like their name, email address, anything that's in the provider's data that they make accessible to you, then you can have access to that. Also, you can use, once you know that a user is authenticated, you can then do lookups using that data that is in there, that's from their authentication token, to store data and make that persist. So you could be, for example, managing a recruitment process, and in that recruitment process you might want to create a bot for applicants, but you only want, obviously, to give data about application progress to people that are authenticated. But once they've authenticated, you've then got their user token. You can then use their user token to go and query data in Dataverse that has data in it about their particular flow, their particular status that they're at in the recruitment process. So that's why you'd want to authenticate, and you can add it in really easily. So it supports OAuth 2, so if you're technical, you know that that's an industry standard. It also supports multiple providers, so you can leverage Azure Active Directory, absolutely. You can also use Google as a provider, or other services, LinkedIn, Microsoft consumer accounts. There's other different ways of being able to other different providers for connecting. Now, obviously, being a Microsoft partner, and as this is a Microsoft product, highly recommend Azure Active Directory for a simple reason of you're not giving your data to anyone else, or you're not letting the other provider know that the user is authenticating to this particular product. So it's just in terms of data integrity and keeping things under the one roof, Azure Active Directory is recommended. So there is a lab on this. Now, this is optional. There's no need to go through the full lab. But if this is something that you might want to set up for your organization, then obviously recommend that you do go through this. Let me just pull up the lab document for lab number 7. Excuse me one second. So here is the lab document for lab number 7. Zoom in. So what you'll need to do now, obviously do this in your tenant, your demo tenant. You'd go to this URL, and then you go through these app registrations, and it's pretty easy to click along this stuff. Now, one thing to make sure of, now you're going to need to copy and paste these things out. So I recommend that you get a notepad open and just copy and paste these things out that it's asking you to do here, because you're going to need these for later on. And then delete that. If this was production, you would then delete that notepad document. Highly important, delete that notepad document once you finish with it. So yeah, you'd open those up on a temporary basis, copy and paste them out somewhere temporary. Don't leave them around. So once you've done that, you do this in Azure Portal first. You create this thing called an app registration that allows a particular app access to something called the Microsoft Graph, which is authentication, which has data in it that you can leverage once authenticated. And then you'd go into Power Automate, you go to the virtual agents, you go to manage, and then security, and this is where you set up authentication. And you just follow the bouncing ball with these to set it up. So if it is something you're going to be setting up for your organization, then highly recommend going through this. Once you've set these things up, you then create the authentication topic, which will then ask the user to authenticate. And that's as far as I'm going to go with authentication. It is a very useful thing that's included in Power Automate, and it's optional. There's nothing, it's an advanced topic for those of you that might want to set up authentication. At least you have the ability there to do that. So next topic is handing off to a support agent, and we'll chat to you then.